welcome to Southern Sense Talk Radio with your host, the radio chick, Annie Ubellis. Join Annie on Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with an open chat room full of her regulars. And yes, you can even call in. Call 917-889-3675. That's 917-889-3675 to be a part of the action on the phone line. Not able to listen live? Not a problem. You can always catch Annie, the radio chick, and Southern Sense Talk Radio podcast in archives at southern-sense.com. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Southern Sense the right way.
Oh, welcome back. This is Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, SHR Media, High Plains Media, American Patriot Radio, Kinetic Hi-Fi, the Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina. And I know I screwed that up. I probably forgot half a dozen other places I'm at. But just go to our website, which is the name of the show. Put a dash in the middle, Southern-Sense. I'm your hostess with the mostest. Oh, God, I can't even remember what the heck my name is. It's going to be one of those days, Curtis. I'm the hostess with the mostest, the radio chick, Annie. And thank you, Fly. He just told me what my name is. Oh, man. I got it all. Along with my co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. When you get yourself doing 15 different things at the same time, you really screw yourself up. It just goes to prove I cannot walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. I'm no genius, guys, so I don't know why you're listening.
Well, no, you just have days like that, Annie. We all do.
Mama said there'd be days like this. Oh, there'd be days like this. Oh, man, we got ourselves a great show lined up. We've got two returning guests. Richard Lynch of the Richard Lynch Band, also with LoveTattooFoundation.org, is going to be joining us the first half. He'll be here at the half hour until the top of the show. And then we're going to be followed by Len Sandler, who has a brand new book out that just came out just last month. It's called Because of You, We Lived, The Untold Story of George and Simone Stalnaker. And it's a really excellent book. There was things in there I didn't realize about what was going on during World War II. Little minutia things, but, interesting stuff that's in there, and a very, very heartbreaking and loving story. So he'll be joining us the second half of the show. So we got two great guests for today lined up, and lots to talk about. Lots of things going on, and we'll be talking about that. It looks like the Senate is going to be trying to do their filibusters, and there's so much we can talk about on that, too, why the Senate should get rid of the filibuster, or at least amend the rules to their original intent. It's silly season. It is absolutely silly season. The moment Trump was elected, the United States went one section stayed sane, and the rest is just going ape. Really. It's amazing. Go ahead, Curtis.
Well, I understand that Mike Pence cast a deciding vote on the Secretary of Education today. So that's a good thing.
So Betsy DeVos is now Secretary of Education, official. Is that right?
Yep.
Oh, good. Matter of fact,
that's correct.
The restaurant that holds our Tea Party meetings, he's in the middle of his lunch hour, and he's texting me, who are the two Republicans that were not going to vote for Betsy DeVos? And I had to stop and think about that. It was Murkowski and Susan Collins were the two Republicans that said they would not. So Mike Pence's vote was needed to break that tie, so I'm glad. I've been running around like crazy, so I haven't seen any news today. I still got Sunday's newspaper sitting on my my coffee table here. I haven't opened that yet. Right.
Oh, man.
It's just a little crazy out here. Anyway, people that listen to the show know we start off each and every show with the dedication to a fallen hero. And again, today's dedication, once again, is going down to a law enforcement officer that's fallen in the line of duty. Today's show is going to be dedicated to Deputy Sheriff Eric James Oliver of Nassau County Sheriff's Office in Florida. His end of watch was Tuesday, November 22nd of 2016. And this is from News 4 in Jacksonville, out of Nassau County, Florida, by Ashley Mitchum and Jim Piggott. Hundreds of people gathered Saturday to remember the life of a Nassau County Sheriff's deputy who was killed in the line of duty. Deputy Eric Oliver, 32, was killed when he was struck by an SUV while chasing an undocumented worker across a highway. Oliver and another deputy were assisting a Border Patrol agent who had detained 6 people at a Gate gas station on State Road in Yulee when one of the men ran. The deputies followed the undocumented worker on foot. The first deputy made it safely across the road, but Oliver was struck and killed. Oliver joined the sheriff's office in 2009 after serving 5 years in the U.S. Navy. He leaves behind a 6-year-old daughter. Uniformed deputies and officers filed in along with citizens at the First Baptist Church of Fernanda Beach as music played and photos of Oliver and his family were displayed on 2 screens above the stage. 2 officers stood on either side of Oliver's flag-draped casket as wreaths and flower arrangements lined both sides of the stage. Governor Rick Scott, Florida Senator Aaron Bean, and State Attorney Angela Corey were among the dignitaries seated on the stage, along with Nassau County Sheriff Bill Leeper. Leeper said Oliver was not just an employee of the sheriff's office, he was family. I ask you to try to live a life a little more like Eric did, Leeper said. Try not to take everything so seriously. Smile more. Have a good time with family and friends. After sharing a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote about the meaning of a successful life, Leeper said he believed Oliver lived such a life. I can say for certain that Deputy Oliver was successful because our community breathed easier because he lived, Leeper said. Oliver's father, Doug Oliver, who was also a former military service member and law enforcement officer, said his son survived 2 combat tours with the Navy in the Middle East before deciding to leave the military and move back to Fernanda Beach. Doug Oliver said that after Eric was hired as a corrections officer in Nassau County, he got the itch and wanted to be on the streets as a patrol deputy. So he worked 20-hour days going to the academy during the day and then working as a corrections officer at night, getting only a few hours of sleep. My brothers knew what it's like to do that, Doug Oliver said. It's not easy. Doug said he was proud of how his son served the community and described the awful moment when Leeper came to his door to deliver the news that his son had died in the line of duty. He said his family had been getting through one day at a time since then. Our community has been showing us a lot of love, and I really appreciate it. It shows me that his life wasn't wasted on a community that didn't love him, Doug said. He loved this community. He loved this country. He would have died in the military if he had to. And you see what he did here. He died for our community to make it safer. He also tried to offer peace of mind to the woman who hit his son. I also want to put my hand out in extension to the young lady that is out there that struck my son. Doug Oliver said, I know you're grieving. I know you're having a rough time. I know it will never leave your mind. But I want you to know we have forgiven you, and it's not your fault. Other speakers at the funeral asked the community to continue to be there for Eric Oliver's family. Everyone will show up to help law enforcement officer, and the reason why is that they show up every day for us, Scott said. I know Eric's family will always be taken care of right here. Bean implored the crowd to continue to support Eric Oliver's family and fellow members of law enforcement well after the service. It is my hope that our support for Eric's family does not end when we lay him to rest today, Bean said. The best way we can honor the sacrifice of this American hero is to show our support and gratitude for every member of law enforcement and to embrace Deputy Oliver's family and demonstrate that we are indeed a nation, state, and a community worthy of his sacrifice. Eric Oliver was buried with full military and police honors, including a 21-gun salute, at the Bosque Bello Cemetery. He was very family-oriented. A neighbor of Oliver's parents, Jennifer Kelly, said, "A wonderful father, and it shocked us all in this community." Attendees said Oliver died doing what he loved and lived a life dedicated to protecting the country. The American flag outside the Nassau County Sheriff's Office was flying at half-staff, just feet above Oliver's patrol car, which had become a growing memorial of wreaths, flowers, balloons, and photos. The Nassau County Fire Department also honored Oliver by displaying a flag in front of the funeral home. This is a tragedy you never want to see happen, but when it does, first responders come together as one family. They all work together every day. If one passes away, it hurts a lot of us, Leeper said. Now is the time for us to come together, heal the wounds, and carry on. Today's show is dedicated to Deputy Oliver, but is also dedicated to all the brave men and women out there that serve as first responders. It is also dedicated to the brave men and women who serve in our military from the start of this nation to today and into the future. We dedicate this song, Last Call, by Dave Bray. God bless them all.
Don't ever forget me.
And that was Dave Bray, Last Call, which you can find at davebrayusa.com. And we're back. You're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, American Patriot Radio, SHR Media, High Plains Daily News Media, Kinetic Hi-Fi, The Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina, up on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, and all of the heck with it. You know what I'm going to say next. Just go to our website, which is the name of the show, put a hyphen in the middle, southern-sense.com. You're here listening to me, Annie, the radio chick, along with my co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett, who you'll find at theoriginalradicals.com. Curtis, oh man, we've got so much to talk about and so much to do, but I've got to do a small little promo. Let me just play this promo, and we'll be right back in a minute.
Keeping with the traditions of the great American Southwest, when heroes were needed, they appeared. People who would mete out truth and justice and defend the weak. People like Vito and Al, Kel, Paul, Annie, LaShonda and Bill, Gotti and Dee, Chuck, David, Kath, Foster and Mike. The modern-day heroes of the Internet airwaves and the hosts of the magnificent 7 days of programming you can listen to each week right here on AmericanPatriotRadio.com.
Hi, this is Annie Ubellis, the radio chick of Southern Sense Talk Radio. I'm inviting you to join me and my guests to listen to us on Southern Sense Talk Radio. You'll find us informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect, but you'll never be bored. You'll never know where we'll go, but you'll love the journey. You can join us every Tuesday and Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Southern Sense, and that is Southern with a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com.
All right, Curtis, and we're back. We'll have our guest joining us, Richard Lynch, at 2:30. So at the half hour, he'll be calling in. He's got a new mix out of Love Tattoo, his release. It's now a duet and a video that goes with it. We'll be talking to him about the Love Tattoo Foundation. Want to welcome everyone that's up in the chat room and listening in the studio. Just remember, if you want to participate in the show when you call in, which is 917-889-3675, press 1, and that way I know you're raising your hand to make a comment or ask a question. Otherwise, I will assume that you're listening in. Curtis, all right, we just started the show off with our dedication. We were talking about Betsy DeVos now being our Department of Education secretary. And everyone's having a huge debate over President Trump's moratorium on the 7 countries in the Middle East, the immigration or even coming over on a tourist visa, it seems like. And you've got... You even have a fight in my own family going on over this. I was up on Facebook over the weekend, and my nephew and my brother decided to get into a little bit of a tiff with me over it. And, you know, I posted the actual wording, which I found up on, of all places, NPR, which is not a conservative news outlet. And they had the wording of the moratorium. It does not specify Muslim as a religion in this moratorium. It does not specify any specific religion in the moratorium. What it does, it says that from these 7 countries, we have a known history of terrorist actions from people immigrating from that country to the United States. Somalia being one of them, Yemen being another, Iran being one of them. We have known instances where terror attacks were either planned or carried out from people that came to the United States from these nations, these 7 specific. They don't name all Muslim nations. They only name these 7 nations in the Middle East. They don't even identify them as being a Muslim nation. In fact, the most populous Muslim nation that's not on that ban is Indonesia, with over 10 million Muslims there and a large contingency and community here in the United States. But you don't see the terrorist acts coming from that country or those people. So, you know, this is where
It's really hypocritical. It's really hypocritical of the left to have this false outrage when Obama and Clinton did the same thing. And matter of fact, when Clinton gave a speech on it during his presidency, they applauded him. And if we want to really get into it, we can go back to Carter, who expelled them for like, I think, 5 years. So it's really, like I said, it's just hypocritical. Doesn't matter to them that somebody else on their side did the same thing. It's just another opportunity to go after Trump.
It is. And the funniest part is this moratorium was not one that Trump wrote on his own. It was one that Obama wrote. The Obama administration picked these 7 specific countries. So if you did not protest when Obama did this action, why are you protesting now? If it was okay back then, why is it not okay now? And then, someone turns around and said to me, well, it favors Christians. Well, no, Trump said after he issued the order that he said his intention may have been to help the Christians that were not emigrating, that were being held back, prevented from coming, to give them a foot up and say, all right, fine, we see that it's an unfair situation. Why is it we're only allowing Muslims in and only just a precious few, a couple hundred of Christians, when we've got thousands upon thousands of Muslims? What about the Christians that are being murdered, persecuted, chased out of their homes? Why aren't we protecting them? Because they are actual, in truth, refugees. Right? So, but the order doesn't specify Christianity. It doesn't specify Islam. It does not specify Judaism. So you can't call it a Muslim ban, especially when you don't have the most populous Muslim countries in on the ban. It's a moratorium for 120 days total. That's it. It's a temporary thing for 4 months until we take a look at our policies and see where the flaws are and fix it. Is that too hard to ask, really?
Well, we didn't call it a Christian ban when he was importing all these refugees from Islamic countries, and maybe 1/3 from, not even 1/3, 1/4 of them were from Christian nations.
Actually,
so,
the number is less than that. The number is actually less than that, Curtis, because if you go to Ann Cochran's refugee resettlement website, just Google it, Ann Cochran refugee resettlement, and you'll find it up there. The numbers are astronomically small. Small. If that's not an oxymoron, I don't know what is. But you only find, out of all the refugees, which are tens of thousands of them, not millions, tens of thousands of them, only a few hundred are Christians. Only a few hundred. So you're talking about maybe 1% in the refugee resettlement program, where you find the highest number of murders are probably of Christians being executed for Christianity, for believing it. The Yazidis, the Kurds. You can go on and on. So, the churches are being destroyed. Christians are being chased out of their home. Their identification papers are stolen or destroyed by ISIS and all these other terrorist groups that are chasing them out. They're being dumped in these camps, and then once they're in the camps, the Muslims are in the camps continue to further harass them, to strip them of their food, their dignity, and any possible humanity left for these poor Christians. So why aren't we favoring them? It is lopsided. Absolutely lopsided.
It is. And I don't see it getting any better on the left. They're accepting our hero on the right. They had their hero and their defender in Obama for 8 years, and now we have ours. And as usual, they've thrown a hissy fit.
Yeah, and the funniest part is that here we are. You've had the riot that was going on in Berkeley, and they're calling themselves anti-fascists, and yet they are using fascist tactics. The teeth in straight. Fascist tactics. They are wearing the black shirts like Hitler's brown and black shirts did. They are destroying property. And they are forcing out free speech. They're saying it's either our way or no way. If you don't like it, we're going to just destroy the place. They are doing the very same thing Hitler did when he came to power. And they're promoting a socialistic doctrine the same way that Hitler did. And then to claim that they're not fascist in what they're doing, it's a bold-faced lie. An absolute bold-faced lie. Yeah.
It is. And I can I can expect this to continue, even as their numbers dwindle on the Democrat side. I think they see this whole election as a struggle for their very existence, and it's like putting a cat in the corner. He's just going to defend himself in any way and by any means possible. And it's sad that these folks do not believe in our constitutional, process here. We can see that in the obstructionist ways that they have everything this man put forth, Trump. They stand in the way. It's like if it can't be our way, it's not going to be any way. And that's not how this country was founded. I grew up accepting, the results of every election, and whether I liked it or not, and that was just the adult thing to do.
Yeah. Well,
apparently, we don't have adults these days.
That's the problem. We don't have adults running, the Democratic Party anymore. And I think that's what the main problem is. I do believe we got our guest in on the line. I believe this is Richard Lynch I'm talking to, is it not?
This is me.
Ah, welcome back, Richard. It has been.
Thank you.
It's been a short while, but I see that you've got your a new mix out, which you have a duet with Ronnie McDowell, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit. But welcome back, and how was your holiday? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year!
Oh man. Well, thank you. We've had a blast. We've had a great run of success here. We're currently playing down in South Texas right now through the month of February. Loving the sunshine, loving the real country music fans down here, just having a great time.
Yeah, it is. It's gorgeous weather in the South, while the northern Yankees are suffering from snow. And I'm laughing all the way to the mailbox. Oh, that's cold. That's cold.
That's
pun
terrible.
intended. Yeah, you're currently on tour. You're going through Texas, Ohio, and was it Michigan or Minnesota that you're going through? I forget. I saw the 3 states you were going through, and you have yourself on tour.
Yeah,
most of this year, it looks like.
Yeah, we have just about we've got most of our year about filled up. We got some time. We're going to do some stuff. We're currently in Texas through the month of February. Then we go back to Ohio for 2 weeks, and then we're going back to Texas for a week, and then we're going to Florida for a week. It's just like, and my wife keeps me on a need-to-know basis. That's as far out as I know. This music thing has got me spread out pretty thin. But I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I'm loving what we're doing.
Hey, if it's putting bread on the table and paying the mortgage, what are you going to complain about, right?
Absolutely. There's not a bad day in life if you don't have to, do something that you don't want to do. If you do something you enjoy and you love what you do and you can make a living at it, that's a pretty good way to go through life, I think.
Yeah. Now, I see that at the end of the year, your song, A Better Place, which we had played the last time you were on here, which we'll play again, of course, A Better Place was named #1 on Roots Music Report for 2006. #1 for the entire year? That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. That whole album was a huge success for us, and it's catapulted us into so many opportunities that we would never have had if we hadn't had that album recorded. And by that I mean we've been played in 32 countries around the world in a continual cycle rotation list on many, many, many stations, and we had a 32-week run at #1 on Roots Music with that particular song. And, it's just amazing how people are really starting to resonate with the traditional country music sounds that they want to hear some more of that. And I've always leaned really heavy on the traditional sound, and I don't claim to have all the answers, but it sure seems to be working for us. People are loving that traditional sound again, and looking for folks that's going to provide it for them. And I want to be able to provide it for them as long as I possibly can.
As a matter of fact, I was reading up on what you've been doing since the last time we talked, but another song from that same album made it up into the top 100 for the year. One of the ones I enjoyed a lot, She Got Me Drinking Again, with what you did with Billy Yates, right?
that was a blast. You know, when we did that song together, and Billy wrote that song as well as produced the Better Place album. And so when we were in the studio, I said, Billy, this is such a great song. She got me drinking again. I said, you know, what do you think about us doing this as a duet? And he said, well, let's give it some thought. So we kind of hammered around the lyrics, and he said, I think this will work. So we just did the song as a duet, and it really, really exploded in Europe. And it's done well here in the States, too. But it's a lot of fun to play live. We get to do it live, and the band really enjoys the fact that it's a, up-tempo, hard-driving, fun country song to play. And it fills the dance floor up when we get to play that song live. It's just a lot of fun.
Well, I'm trying to find it on my list here. Just bear with me for a second. Where the heck did it go? No. There we go. I got it. By George, I got it. I think I got it. Here we go.
My world turned gray. She went away. Said she found somebody new. I fell apart with an aching heart. Didn't know what to do. So I got dressed up and jumped in my truck. Faked me a big old grin. Called my buddy Bill, said there's no time to kill. She got me drinking again. Back on the bottle, back on the stool, telling dirty jokes, laughing like a fool, having lots of fun just being me. So here's a toast to what it used to be. Yeah, thanks to her, I'm back out hanging out with my friends. Got me drinking again. So we paid our tab and called in a cab and went back to your house. Then we started to think as you poured us some drinks. You said, boys, I got it figured out. I made her off like this, and I don't really miss what I thought I had before she skipped. So I picked up the phone and I heard her moan when I said, you got me drinking again. Back on the bottle, back on the stool, telling dirty jokes, laughing like a fool, having lots of fun just being me. So here's a toast to what you used to be. Yeah, thanks to her, I'm back out hanging out with my friends. She got me drinking again. Telling dirty jokes, acting like a fool, having lots of fun just being me. So here's a toast to what used to be. Yeah, thanks to her, I'm back out hanging out with my friends. Yeah, thanks to her, I'm back out hanging out with my friends. She got me drinking again. She got me drinking again.
Oh, I just love the guitar in that. That is just awesome. I can see why people are going to be up there dancing.
Song.
Oh, it is. It is. But I wonder, what did your wife think when you did that song? What did she say to you?
Well, she pretty well, promotes and, pretty well accepts about whatever I do. And musically, she's all in my corner. And I've never had a bigger fan or a more helpful situation in my life to where, I mean, she's promoter. She loves the fact that she does the road with me every gig we do, and I don't mean 90% of them. She does every show with me. She sells merchandise. The biggest fan, the biggest promoter of the band I've ever seen, and so she really loves that song and loves that entire album.
In other words, I know who wears the pants in the house on that one.
But yeah, you saw right through that, didn't you? Exactly right.
Well, it's funny because my husband, I helped him with several of his businesses, and he recently just retired. But he turns around and was saying, "Well, yeah, I did the home inspections and everything else, but I never saw the money. I never saw the checks."
Well, we're on the same page again. That's right. That's funny. But it's great to be in a situation where finally we're really fortunate. I'll be honest with you. We me and my wife and the band members that we absolutely love this country music. I'm second generation. I grew up in a country music household. My dad was an incredible singer and entertainer around the Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio area. And I've always loved that real traditional country sound. And, when you get to thinking about it, if people question, about country music, and I explain to them how diverse real country music can be. It can be hard driving like that She Got Me Drinking Again, or it could be a heartfelt country song that from the heart that just rips your heart out, or it could be a Texas swing that makes you want to just dance. It's just so much good diversity in real country music, and I'm just so blessed and so fortunate that I get to do what I love to do.
Well, what I like is that you are versatile. You can go from the hard rock and country to the soft side of it, which you do in the song A Better Place. Tell us about that.
Well, A Better Place was ended up being the title track of that CD. And, it's one of those songs, I kind of got to go back a little bit. When we started putting the album together, A Better Place album, we listened to virtually hundreds of different songs. And Billy wrote lots of them, and many, many other writers in and around the Nashville area submitted these songs to me. And Better Place is probably the only song that I listened to that I knew the first time I heard it, I had to record that. It just touched me in a way that it gave me goosebumps, and very few songs just make me that emotional. And I knew that song would resonate around the country and around the world. And when I heard the song, I envisioned maybe George Jones singing it, maybe somebody of that caliber, because the song speaks for itself. It's such a well-written and well-delivered song. And once I got in the studio, I realized, hey, we really have something here. And sure enough, people really, they connected with that particular song. And, it's not about a whole, a walk in the park. It's a serious, sensitive topic song, but it's such a good, well-written song that it's been so well received. I just loved it, and I'm glad everybody else has turned out to like that song so much too.
Well, I think the last time we spoke about it, I had told you that when I heard the song, it evoked the memory of George Jones and She Stopped Loving Him Today song. That's what came across my mind when I was listening to it. Pardon me, I've got a 7-month-old
I agree,
kitten.
100%.
Pardon me, I got a 7-month-old kitten trying to climb on my keyboard here.
Well, maybe that cat likes some country music too. That's good.
Well, this is A Better Place, and if I can get my little thing go right there, we go. And here we go.
I was driving, it was raining, on my way to bring her roses. When I got there, she wasn't there alone. Oh, it tore my world to pieces to know we'd never be together. So I said goodbye and headed off down the road. I couldn't see for the tears had rained. I heard the crash and I felt the pain, and my life was over just like that. But I'm in a better place, no more tears on my face. Up here above the clouds, I can see clearly now. She was my reason for living, and after all the love I'd given, I never dreamed I'd die with this heartache. Oh, but I'm in a better place. Now she's standing there crying like she's dying to hold me. Too bad she waited too late. I spent most of my life just trying to make her love me. I can't believe what it took to finally make her look my way. The preacher man sends up a prayer. The organ music fills the air, and a choir sings as they carry me away. But I'm in a better place, no more tears on my face. Up here above the clouds, I can see clearly now. She was my reason for living, and after all the love I'd given, I never dreamed I'd die with this heartache. Oh, but I'm in a better place. Oh, she was my reason for living, and after all the love I'd given, I never dreamed I'd die with this heartache. Oh, but I'm in a better place.
What a beautiful, beautiful song. And I had to mute myself because I was singing in the background to it, which is what you want. You want people to be able to enjoy
That's
it.
right.
Now,
Exactly right.
I did not know that on Thursdays you co-host a radio show. Tell us about that at a Renegade Radio in Nashville.
Yeah, Captain Jack and myself have got us a Renegade radio show that we do. I'm a co-host on that every Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And, it's a little inside look or behind-the-scenes look, if you will, about, country music artists. And I want to make sure I clarify country music artists. I mean traditional country music artists. And, there's folks that there's a lot of folks that love these folks, and they don't get to hear much from them. And so I like being in and around and sharing some of these great stories that some people know about, but a lot of folks don't know these personal stories that we get to talk to, like Jeannie Seeley and Ray Stevens and Erlene Mandrell, just to name a few of the folks that's been in, Ronnie McDowell. It's great to be around those wonderful folks because they've got great stories, and even though they're not getting mainstream airplay these days, they have a great interest out there, and I can kind of chime in and compare my stories with theirs. It's just a lot of fun, and they're playing my music on the radio Renegade Radio Nashville network, and they're playing the other artists that's around there. So it's a lot of fun, and we really, really enjoy doing that.
Got to get you on XM radio on Willie's Roadhouse. Get you out there.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to that. You hear some the traditional songs that Willie does, and so there is some similarity to that there. But the difference is they get to hear the actual artists come on board and tell their little stories, and most of them are funny. Oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff that they tell us. and that makes it for an interesting hour when we do that kind of stuff. So it's really fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is fun doing radio. It's something completely different from anything I've done in the past. So, I've been doing this now, good Lord, for going on 7 years. How long have you been doing it with the Renegade Radio?
Oh, we've just been doing the Renegade Radio Show about 4 or 5, maybe 6 months now. And it's really been, it's really been a, kind of, when you take something on and you're kind of new at it, it's been a great learning experience for me. I've always been in and around radio, a lot of my songs and interviews and that kind of stuff. But it's a different animal when I'm behind the mic conducting the interview versus being conducted by the interview. That makes sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. You got to really think fast, because here if you're being interviewed, you're reacting to what the host is saying to you. But if you're the host, it's like, all right, what's the next question so I don't sound stupid? That's the difference.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. And, if we have a person that's good enough to come on board and want to be part of our interview, our show, you don't want to sound like, like a big dummy. You want to know a little bit about them. So I really enjoy the fact that I get to do that. And I might add, do a great job on these interviews. I might add that. So, and I know your listeners know that. So
that's okay.
We appreciate you.
I'm wearing the hip boots, folks. I've got the shovel and the hip boots right here, so don't worry about it. If he lays it on thick, I'm ready to shovel it. Now, go ahead. My co-host had dropped off before, so now he's back. Curtis, go ahead.
Yeah.
I see you and hear you.
I apologize. Yeah, I apologize for that. I missed some of the interview because I got dropped out. But anyway, I was just curious. Have you ever gotten around to meeting some of your country singer heroes?
Well, if I understood you correctly, and I got just a little bit of a delay in your voice. Can I get you to say that one more time?
In your travels, have you gotten to meet some of your country singing heroes and heroines, people that you look up to?
Well, when you go, like I said, I'm still a little bit of a break up there. I think what you said, if I understood it correctly, we when we travel around, we get to do our shows, and there's a lot of folks around the country that are kind of wondering where we're playing. And if you go to our website, the RichardLynchBand.com, you can see all the places around the country. Like currently, we're in South Texas right now, and believe it or not, there's folks from all over the country in South Texas. Of course, it's a warm weather destination, and we meet people from Canada and all over the place down here. And so, yeah, it's a great way to be down here in warm weather and to spread our music and to meet these wonderful folks down here. And then that creates an immense amount of opportunity for later on in the year. We have met people from Michigan and Minnesota and Wisconsin and on and on and on. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to be down here. And I'm hoping I answered your question there. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, actually, was the people that you look up to in the musical sense in the country music business. Have you met any of the people that you admired growing up?
Oh, my goodness. I grew up listening to people like Keith Whitley and Merle Haggard and Conway Twitty and George Jones and all those wonderful artists. And for someone to compare me to, just recently, we did a show the other day, and a lady said, she really loved the song A Better Place. And she said, I envision George doing that song, and I know Ann has thought the same thing. But, when I hear somebody compare me to somebody like a legend like that there, I am so flattered. I don't take myself serious, and I don't take myself to where I'm arrogant or nothing like that there. I really just love what I do. But for someone to compare me to a superstar and a legend like that, I am so flattered, and I love hearing that, of course. But, it's just something that that I just do because I love what I do. But and it makes me do it more when I hear folks appreciate the fact that I get to do all that stuff and be around and be compared to those legends. That's the ultimate compliment as far as I'm concerned.
No, it is. But you are a very, very talented singer-songwriter. But not only that, you are deeply involved in the Love Tattoo Foundation, that people can find you at lovetattoofoundation.org. It's a wonderful organization, and because of this, you also have a song that you've just re-recorded with Rhonda McDowell, who you mentioned before, as a duet. And I urge everyone to go onto your website to look at the video of that song. It's really really powerful. But tell us about the love tattoo, and what is a love tattoo, and why should we, when we see someone with a love tattoo, thank them and honor their sacrifice?
Well, I'll just say this. A love tattoo has nothing to do with ink. The tattoo that we're speaking of is a man or woman that has served our great nation in this military, and their love tattoo is either a psychological issue that they're dealing with or a physical issue, whether they've been shot up or if they've come back with, there's a lot of tragedy that happens in the military, especially with the bombs and so forth and the devastation. So our men and women come back with missing limbs, and that's their love tattoo. That's their scar for life. So that's the love tattoo. But there's a gentleman that I speak really highly of who actually sent this song to us in the form of a poem. His name is Chuck Brisbane, and he lives in Virginia Beach, and he's a friend of my wife's and another mutual friends. And he was watching, now I'll give you an explanation as to how this song came to be. He was watching the news one evening, if I'm telling the story correctly, and they were showing on his local news a gentleman that was coming back from Afghanistan, and he was pretty well shot up pretty bad, and it touched Chuck immensely, so he made his mind up that he would like to go and visit this soldier in the hospital. So he did just that. And as he got to the hospital room, there was a note that was taped on the soldier's hospital room that said, "If you're coming here to feel sorry for me, please leave." Well, that touched Chuck even more so. So he wrote his poem called Love Tattoo. And he sent the poem to my wife, and a little while later I had a chance to sit down and work on it, and I put some music to it. And then me and another songwriter friend in Nashville, Terry Dennis, added a chorus to it to where we felt, it gave it justice to his beautiful poem to come up with a song. And I was so honored that Chuck felt enough trust and belief in my ability to put music to his great poem to where we had a great song. And so the song was out for a little while, and it did well, and it did what we tried it to do. And then we did a show with Ronnie McDowell, and this is how Ronnie McDowell came into the picture. Ronnie did a show at our farm, which is in Waynesville, Ohio. We have a big building up there where we have events 3 or 4 times a year. And I found out that Ronnie McDowell did a 3-tour of duty in Vietnam. And I was so impressed with the fact that he did all that, and he loves his country so much. And I said, "Ronnie, I have a song that I think you would like to hear." And so he heard it, and I asked him if he would be willing enough to do it as a duet with me. And we re-recorded the Love Tattoo song as a duet, and all the proceeds that we sell off of this particular CD goes to a place in Michigan called the Whirlwind Lodge. And it's a facility where our men and women of the soul of our military can go. And from World War II to today, if you're a live veteran that that needs some little psychological help or a little R&R, there's a place that exists for these men and women who have done so much for us. So it's just my little way of giving back to the country and to the people that's given me so many opportunities, and I know Ronnie McDowell feels the same way.
Well, people can find out about this lodge by going to the Love Tattoo Foundation. And it is a really beautiful song, and Richard, that, we are really pro-military, and the men and women that are coming back from our wars, whether it is from the World War II veterans still alive, Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War. Matter of fact, my co-host is a veteran of the Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan, go on and on. If you served, even if you did not serve in a war zone, they still deserve our respect, and for the love of a country that they have volunteered to go and protect us, to protect our rights and liberties. Yep. And we can never say thank you enough. Matter of fact, we've got someone in the chat room. I call him Sasquatch. He says, "I love McDowell." Oh, no, he's being funny. He's trying to be funny. Planet of the Apes. Wrong. Not Roddy McDowell. Ronnie McDowell. Sorry about that. I've got clowns. You got me. You got me there, Sasquatch. All right. But we're going to thank you for joining us. And as we leave, we're going to close off with your song, Love Tattoo, Richard. And I want to wish you a lot of luck on this. You do so much hard, good work for the Love Tattoo Foundation that I can't thank you enough for, helping these veterans help themselves.
Well, I really appreciate you saying those kind words, but for what little I do, it's nowhere near enough recognition for what they have already done. So it's just a little way for me to give a little bit back, and thank you for having me the opportunity to be on your station and to share my story and to connect to these folks out here that love our music.
Well, anytime you want to come back, just knock Michael over the head and say, "Hey, get me back on Annie's show," and I'll be happy to have you back on. I've known Michael since I started the show, so I've known him for about 7 years. He's a good guy. But this is...
He is. And if I may say, I just like to invite all the folks to go to our website at richardlynchband.com. And, if you're not familiar with our music or whatever, we'd sure love to invite you to that. And you can see the places we're playing around the country. And I love to meet folks at our events, shake their hand, hug their neck, get to know them for a little bit. We love what we do with other folks out there that's given us an opportunity to do what we love.
All right. Well, Richard, we have a link in the show description, so when people listen to the podcast later on, they can just click on the link and go directly to the site and make a donation to the Love Tattoo Foundation, or go and pick up one of your songs, your records. So this is your song.
Sounds great.
With you and Ronnie McDowell, Love Tattoo. So thank you for joining us, Richard. I'm telling everyone to go to your website, Richard Lynch Band, or to lovetattoofoundation.org. Check it out. Richard, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
Take care. All right, Richard
Take care,
Lynch.
Richard.
He loves his God, his kids, his wife. For them, he gladly give his life. He served his country as many do, and he came home with a love tattoo. I remember when the soldier walked past. He paused as he heard a young child ask, "Where'd you get that scar I see on you?" He smiled and said, "It's not a scar, it's my love tattoo." The soldier said, "To keep our world more safe for you, I fought and bled as many do. I did what I knew I had to do. No, it's not a scar, it's my love tattoo. My love tattoo is a symbol to remind him how we fought with pride for our red, white, and blue. If Uncle Sam asked him to stand with our soldiers in some foreign land, he'd unpack his uniform and combat boots, and with honor bring back home a new love tattoo. My love tattoo helps me recall some of my friends who gave their all. They fought and died as many do, so I'm proud to wear my love tattoo. He loves his God, his kids, his wife. For them, he gladly gave his life. served his country like heroes do. And he came home with a love tattoo. Yes, he came home with a love tattoo.
That was Richard Lynch and Ronnie McDowell, Love Tattoo. So check out the website, lovetattoofoundation.org and richardlynchband.com. And Curtis, we've got our next guest already up in the studio. And I loved when I do a theme show where it's, here it's all for the military, the veterans, and history and everything else. So I want to welcome back our friend Len Sandler, who has a new book out, Because of You, We Live, The Untold Story of George and Simone Stalnaker. I probably said that wrong. Stalnaker? Hello, Len.
Stalnaker.
Oh, I did say it right. Okay. First try. Because
I'm delighted to be back on the show again, Annie.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I'm also honored that you remembered me. Because when I got the book in the mail, I'm going, all right, why does that name ring a bell? And then you mentioned Jared Monty, and I says, oh, dingbat. So I'm so glad. I'm honored that you did.
Right.
And you sent me the book to read, which it was fantastic and a very, very good book. Completely different from what you did with Gerald Monty, but this one is had me sitting there going, oh, I forgot about that. And that was a little detail I kind of like tucked away in the back of my head. And, oh, yeah, I remember this. And then you had things in there that I said, oh, I had no idea. So there's something for everyone in this book. If that doesn't get them to go, what the hell is she talking about?
No, the most enjoyable part for me was talking to George and Simone's children and grandchildren and having each of them say at various times, I didn't know that. I had no idea. You've got to be kidding me. Things like that.
Well, yeah, it's a fascinating book because they come from two different parts of the world. She from France and he an American. And because of World War II, their paths crossed. Under normal circumstances, they never would have met. But this was not a normal circumstance. This was World War II, and there was nothing normal about that.
Indeed. They couldn't come from worlds that were any more different. Simone lived a privileged lifestyle. She was the daughter of a French provincial court judge, and she lived in Nice, which is regarded as a vacation paradise. Nearby cities are Saint-Tropez, Marseille, Cannes, and the very mention of them evokes romance and adventure. She would go skiing in the Alps, boating on the Mediterranean. She would go to social events. Among her circle of friends was Prince Rainier of Monaco. And George, on the other hand, was the son of a preacher, and he was born in Des Moines during the Depression in the United States. So he would get up early before school and shovel coal into church furnaces to earn a few dollars of spending money. Very few kids in the U.S. were given an allowance back in those days. And Des Moines, of course, is known as the first presidential primary caucus. But other than that, it's basically corn country. And nearby cities, Davenport, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, and they certainly don't evoke images of romance or adventure.
No, they don't. Like you said, two completely different worlds. And yet, because of what happened to the two of them, they became the perfect pair in essence. But they come from completely different reasons why they became a perfect pair. They both suffered from PTSD. They both fought in the war. Even though she was not per se a person in the military, she was part of the resistance, which in the end became the military. Here she is.
That's
a woman
right. The French resistance grew into the military. It turned into the Free French Army.
Absolutely. And here you would think she'd be worried about, breaking her fingernails, but no, she's out there in the streets carrying a gun.
It's just amazing. You picture her. She got a blue convertible sports car for her 16th birthday. And shortly thereafter, she was in prison. She was a spy also, in addition to working for the underground. She was being starved, and she was being tortured. And at first, she was put in a prison cell that had a window. And one of the things she did was stand up on her tippy toes, look out the window, and see that beautiful blue convertible being loaded onto a train car and given away to one of the Nazis, presumably. She was angry, and she said, I can't believe they're taking my car away. And then she said, what use do I have for it now? I'm in a totally different world.
Oh, that is true. Here she was, a woman of privilege, and she actually got herself into, I believe, if I remember correctly, a general's house where she had worked there?
Yes, her uncle was actually a major general. And he had connections with both the British spy network and also with the underground. And she was just 19 at the time. She said, I hate what's happened to France. And he looked her in the eye. He was always her mentor, someone she could talk to. He looked her in the eye and said, France needs you. She said, me? Are you kidding? I'm just a teenager. He said back, the question is whether you want to remain a teenager or not. Your country needs you. She said, can I think about it? Can I talk to my parents about it? And he said, no, you'll put their lives in danger. And at that moment, she grew into a woman, and she said, I'll do it.
Yeah, she was able to then, get information that she was able to pass to the underground, which went and helped the Allies in a lot of instances. So she was first a spy, and then eventually she was caught. And then she spent all this time inside the prison. And if it wasn't for D-Day, she probably would have died in prison, isn't it right?
That is right. Her prison was bombed 3 days after D-Day. It was actually bombed by the British. There was an engine plant next door to the prison. And she happened to be outside. They let her out once a week for a few minutes of exercise, and she happened to be outside. She was surrounded then by wounded German guards and also wounded French prisoners. She had some training as a nurse. She tended to both the French and the Germans, even those who had tortured her. The commandant happened to see that, and he was so impressed by her compassion and skill that he let her walk out of the prison.
And he did eventually try to write a letter to compliment her for that, and she was so angry. She says, no, I don't want that. They'll think I'm a collaborator.
Yeah, he wrote the letter to her mother, and when she walked home, her mother obviously never thought she'd see her again. Her mother said to her, would you like something to eat? Simone broke down and said, you don't know how long I've been waiting for someone to ask me that question. And she just melted into her mother's arms. Her mother showed her the letter that the commandant had written, and she immediately tore it up and said, I don't want any remembrance whatsoever. Her mother said, do you want to talk about what happened to you in prison? And she said no, and she never spoke to anyone about it.
Well, she did tell her husband after a while of what she went through, but he's the only one that knows what actually happened to her.
That's right. They met after the liberation of Paris. They were at a dinner party, and he said to her, George said to her, what do you do? She said, I'm with the International Red Cross. And that was it. And George sensed that there was something more to the story, but he knew enough not to probe. It wasn't too long after that she did tell him the truth, and George told her about what happened to him as he was shot down behind enemy lines. So that is right. George is the only person who knew the story.
I think about today's youth and, how privileged our youth are. But when George was growing up, the technology that we had back then is nothing compared to what our privileged youth have. the amenities that was available for our youth, the education and everything else is completely different than what we are seeing today. I don't know, in your opinion, do you think our youth today could have won World War II?
Oh, gosh, I wish we knew more about the World War II years. As you say, some of us learned about it in school. We've forgotten a lot. Some of us don't really appreciate it. Some of us don't realize America's greatest generation, I mean, everyone knows that, but they are leaving us at an alarming rate. Now there are about 900 World War II veterans who are dying every day. Even during the World War II years, it averaged only 218 deaths per day. So they're leaving us and leaving us quickly, and in so many cases, probably the majority of cases, they haven't talked to their children, their grandchildren, or their great-grandchildren about what happened to them or what life was like. And it is a shame that people don't appreciate what they went through, the sacrifices they made.
No, that is the God's honest truth. Even my father, towards the very end, didn't say a lot about what he went through, and he was just an occupational troop. He did not see combat, but he was a World War II veteran. But even what he told us of what he saw as an occupational troop in Germany would bring tears to your eyes. He had a photo album, and towards the end, he was having a form of dementia, so he would bring the album out and talk to me and show me the pictures, and we would sit down, have a bite to eat, and then, of course, the album comes out again. He starts the same thing. So I never once said, Dad, you told me that already. I just sat there and I let him talk. And this is what people today don't do. They're not taking the time to find that older relative and sitting down and asking, what's in the photo album? Tell me about it. And your book brings that.
I like to think of it as treasures in the attic. There are photo albums. In a lot of cases, there are letters and other correspondence. And you're right. There are treasures in many, many American attics. And before it's too late, we need to talk to America's greatest generation and say, what happened? I really want to know. They typically would say back to us, I don't want to upset you. And then you have to say, it's all right. I want to hear.
Well, when these veterans were coming back in World War II, they didn't know about PTSD. Now, in George's case, no one treated him for PTSD, which he then had, occasional bouts of flashes of it. But some of his group did get treated. They're not using the methods they use today, obviously, but they did recognize at one point that these guys were shell-shocked, right?
They did, and that's typically what they call the battle fatigue or shell shock. It's the famous incident of General Patton, who slapped a private in the face, saying, get over it. A slap in the face doesn't help anyone to get over it. That's not the right treatment. It's getting it out. It's being willing to talk about it, sometimes again and again and again, so it loses its hold over you. It loses its power. It's like you get it out from inside so it doesn't eat you up inside.
Oh, that's the truth. Now, Curtis, you were going to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is T.S. Bennett. A couple of years ago, there was a project by the U.S. Military, and they were sending out questionnaires to veterans and asking them to give their story of the wars that they've been in. And I believe I contributed to that. And what they were going to do was compile all of this history of everybody's experience and archive it. But I haven't heard anything else about it. Are you aware of that project?
I am. That was done by the Iraq and Afghanistan war vets. And they asked just simple, straightforward questions. Are you having trouble sleeping? Do you ever have nightmares? Do you feel you've been affected in any way? Just simple, straightforward questions. The problem is when veterans are released back to civilian life, they just want to get home. They don't want treatment. So typically they're asked, are you okay? And they say, yeah, I'm fine. I want to go home. And that's it. But the study with the Iraq and Afghanistan war vets, and you can go to their website or they have a Facebook page, had huge numbers. The majority of people had trouble readjusting back to civilian life. The majority, over 50%. It's the hidden cost of war.
You know, it's
and it's not like they can't let go of the war. It's that the war can't let go of them. I mean, they're victims.
Exactly. And it was one of the reasons why the AMVETS and VFW halls started to spring up, because at least these guys were able to sit down with fellow veterans who understood what they went through. You know, it's a
That's
powerful,
right.
you know, nonprofit organizations that do this, but we need to get our government, who asks our men and women to give so much for our nation, to be more proactive in this. You know, you mentioned the George S. Patton slap, and my ex-husband happened to be a Marine. His father was a Marine. His mother was a Navy nurse, and he was my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law really, was a World War I and Korean War veteran and a Vietnam War veteran. And their attitude towards veterans coming home from Vietnam was, oh, these guys are wimps. They're complaining about PTSD. We came home, we got over it, we got on with our lives, and that's it. But that is one of the reasons why I think the military has such an attitude about, you know, the George S. Patton attitude type of thing. Slap them in the face, get over it, and get on with your life.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
No, it's not.
I mean, how could someone not be affected by a battle, by wartime experience? How could someone not be affected in some way?
No, exactly. You know, it's even with the first responders here. Now they're starting to recognize first responders there out in the street do suffer from PTSD. And I didn't realize I had it until I was watching the towers fall on 9/11. And, you know, being a New York City cop, I knew the tactics, I knew what was going on, and I knew those towers were going to go down because of what happened. And that's when it all hit me. And I didn't even know what it was. It was just, I would have bouts of crying. You know, I'd be watching a kitten commercial, and I'd start crying. I'd be like, what is this? You know, I was able to get over it, but it's not easy for men and women in battle. And your book points it out really succinctly. You know, when you look at the sheer numbers of men and women and civilians also that face these horrors, the hardships, the death, the destruction, you know, you can't just leave out the civilians too, which is what Simone was, a civilian, you know, on the inside.
That's right. And she had her problems too. Simone didn't tell George about her PTSD. She was horrified when George would leave. She would say, a direct quote from her diary was, "The nights last forever. I'm terrified when George leaves me." And she didn't tell him because she said, "I don't want to add to his misery. I don't want to cause him more sorrow." So I think women in particular have a difficult time.
Yeah, because they're the ones that
and
say,
civilians have a difficult time. You just wonder what those citizens of Aleppo and other places have gone through and what will last their entire lives, what will affect pretty much a whole generation of people.
And beyond, because if it's with the parents and the parents pass down their fears or their phobias or whatever it is onto the child. So it becomes generational unless you realize it, recognize it, and treat it. You know, it's a fascinating story in your book, Because of You We Live. And I found it amazing. These men we asked to go join the Army, which eventually became the Air Force, the equipment they were given, and how you would be losing a pilot a day in training in just one unit, the 391. Now that, if you think about that today, if that was to happen at the Marine Corps base right near me, losing a pilot a day, that base would be shut down in a heartbeat. But this is what our country demanded of us, and this is what was accepted at that time.
Yeah, there's a myth that exists that the U.S. had an overly strong, all-powerful army in World War II, and nothing could be further from the truth. After Pearl Harbor, Hitler declared war on the U.S. 4 days later, and at that point, the U.S. Army had 180,000 soldiers, which ranked at number 16 in the world, behind such countries as Czechoslovakia, Spain, Poland, Turkey, Portugal, and Romania. The U.S. was just slightly ahead of Bulgaria.
And here we had men and women being called up, and as they were developing the B-26, which is the fighter that George and his crew flew, it was amazing how they were able to develop it, because the pilots were going, wait a minute, I'm going to have to almost crash land this every time I come into the field. This is the stuff that these guys
were... It was literally a one-a-day in Tampa Bay at MacDill Field. George said we lost 80 pilots in 3 months.
Wow. And
he himself said that I had to ditch 2 planes in the Gulf. And, it's incredible. No wonder they're America's greatest generation. They just said, bring it on. Bring it on. We're up for the challenge.
Go ahead, Kurtz. I heard you with a question in the background.
I was just going to say, I'm proud of our military today. They're very loyal, very dedicated. They still have a ways to go, when we look back on our soldiers who fought in horrific battles in the South Pacific and over there in Germany and whatnot. War was a little more raw then. I think they did more hand-to-hand combat, where today everything's kind of like set off. We can, send a missile like 20 miles away, guided missile cruiser 100 miles away, or we can strike from an airplane 2,000 miles away or missile. So it's more personal back in those days, I believe. But nevertheless, I'm still proud of our people.
Oh, absolutely, of course. No question about it. My father was in World War II also. He was a photographer. And I always asked him, Dad, you were a portrait photographer, is that right? You took pictures of people. And he would open his mouth, but words would never come out. And I knew there was some disconnect someplace. And then after he died, I was going through some pictures in the attic, and there was one picture that caused me to understand. He was in a small reconnaissance aircraft, and he was a photographer, all right, but he was taking pictures of bomb sites. So he would go unescorted into enemy territory during the day, take the pictures, be shot at, hoping that he wouldn't be shot out of the air, come back, and then give the pictures to the pilots who would go back under the cover of darkness.
Man.
I never knew that.
No, and a lot of those
no one in the family knew that.
Geez, those photographers, had one of the highest casualty rates because they went in there alone, unescorted, without any armament. Your father was an extremely brave man. Holy moly, that I did not know. Wow, learn something new about someone every day. When I was reading the story that you wrote about George and his crew, I found it absolutely fascinating how after they had gotten shot down behind enemy lines, how they all were able to escape, and they came so close to being captured several times, but some of them actually walking right past the German soldiers, directly past them.
They were very lucky. They knew they were lucky. Thank goodness that they did survive. When they were parachuting out of the B-26, their mission was to destroy the last bridge the Nazis could use to resupply their troops in Normandy. And they chose a parachute target that unfortunately was the worst possible choice. It was Gestapo headquarters. And they had a map. So picture their plane is on fire. They had lost their right engine. The left engine was operating at 35% of power. They were losing altitude at 500 feet per minute. They scurried around. They said, this looks like a good, safe area. It was a Gestapo headquarters. There were no indicators on the map. Despite that, they survived it. They were fortunate enough to have missed the parachute target. George had a schoolboy on a bicycle who came up to him and said, follow me. And the Germans were just minutes behind, and that saved his life. They were really so fortunate.
Yeah, and listening to how the French people, you had collaborators and you also had the local villagers. And how the collaborators just never caught up with them or turned them in is absolutely stunning, because they had whole villages coming out to look at the Americans. These are the Americans. And they would feed them.
Yeah.
And they would share a family. And food was really, really scarce, but they would give them these huge banquets. And when they knew Germans were coming in or a collaborator was coming home, they would hide them out in the field or in the forest. What these people did and the risk they took to their lives, it's not just the individual life. The whole family would have been massacred had, the Germans...
In many cases, the whole village would be massacred. I dedicated the book to members of the French resistance because as I did research, I found story after story of their bravery. I mean, what we knew as Americans was that the French collaborated with the Germans. We knew about the Vichy government, at least I did. And I didn't know how dangerous it was to be in the French resistance and how many gave their lives. About 100,000 gave their lives. If caught, an entire family would be killed, and in many cases, the entire village would be.
And they had no qualms. The tyrants, the Nazis, were absolutely relentless. You even look at a German soldier the wrong way or officer the wrong way, and you'd be subject to arrest. I was just watching, believe it or not, last night, the movie made from the John Steinbeck novel, The Moon is Down, which involves a fictitious Norwegian village. And the guy that co-wrote the script with John Steinbeck had made it now, instead of Steinbeck was like some country in Europe. He specified at that point Nazi Germany and Norway. So it actually brought reality to the war. And as I was finishing up your book, as I was watching the movie, the parallel was so stunning, absolutely stunning, as I was watching the two. Are you familiar with the book or the movie?
I'm not.
Ah, that means you're going to have to go rent it now, and then you'll understand why I found that parallel.
Will.
Because it is about a Norwegian village that got taken over because of a collaborator in there by the Nazis. The Nazis just went in, took out over the entire village because it had a iron mill there, and then how the people themselves were starting to resist, their own resistance that was building, all the way up to the mayor. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful movie. As I was finishing the last few paragraphs of your book, I'm going, oh my goodness, how this movie came on TMC at the same time as I'm finishing up the last chapter in your book was... The good Lord was sitting on my shoulder saying, hey, you've got to see this when you finish reading.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is very
it's just insidious the way the Nazis would try and destroy the will of the people so that the people wouldn't resist. The more they did that, the more resistance there was.
Exactly. And what happened was, as the Allies through D-Day continued to advance into France, more and more people were... used to be little pockets of resistance. They started to unite under de Gaulle, and that is where we came with the powerful French army after the war. But it was like just a couple 100,000 over across the nation, building up to over 500,000.
Yes, and I have a great quote in the book from one of the resistance leaders in Paris, Maurice Kriegel-Valremont, who said, the day that Paris was liberated, to say it was unforgettable is meaningless. It was phenomenal. Everyone should have a day like that once in their lifetime. Imagine after 4 years of German occupation, of seeing people killed all around you, starvation, food shortages, one day Paris is liberated and people are marching in the street. And that's where George and Simone met, in Paris, in the afterglow of that wonderful day of liberation.
And as you described the Paris liberation, I was shocked because here you think everyone's happy, but so many people crowded out to the street. There was a threat of people being crushed to death. And as it was, George and Simone barely survived having themselves being trampled. They were able to finally get away because people were so invigorated with this newfound freedom.
Yeah, furthermore, there were German snipers all over the place.
It's still
and there were people shot on the streets of Paris, and it didn't matter. They wanted to celebrate anyhow. They were willing to take the risk. What an exhilarating moment.
Absolutely. Curtis, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to change up a little bit here. I had a more contemporary question for our guests, and that is our role in NATO, the United States' role in NATO. That's coming under a lot of question here lately. Do you still think we have a role in NATO, and do you think together with these other countries that are allied with us, we will be able to defend Europe in the future against any threat?
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I think we all want that. Who are our allies? Band together with our allies. I wish it were that simple. Things were a lot simpler back in those days. Even warfare was simpler. The enemy was in uniform, and the enemy had a hierarchy, and they would follow orders, and you would get the people at the top to sign a surrender, and it was all official. And it's so messy now. It's just a totally different world. I'd like to see nations band together to fight terrorism. I think we would all want that. But, oh, my God, I don't know how it could happen.
Oh, that's going to be an interesting thing.
Yeah, it is. And I have to believe the administration will struggle with that. But we all want ISIS to be defeated in particular.
Well, unfortunately, as the Muslim population, builds, we see it in Europe, we're seeing it in Canada, we're starting to see it here. There you now have the struggle within our own nation as to whether or not we fight terrorism or not. It's become insidious. So it's a very difficult thing for us as a free people to struggle with. We see this with Donald Trump with the moratorium on travel from 7 nations, and yet people call it a Muslim ban when it's not. It is simply not. It's just, you've got terrorists, you've got fighters coming from these nations to destroy us. So, the burglar is coming. The guy's going to come to rob you. So what do? Leave your front door open? No. But this is something we as a people are going to have to struggle with and find an answer to it.
Absolutely. I hope we do find an answer. I'm sure we all hope that.
Well, what's interesting is in your book, you also follow the career of George and his family, after the war and their continued service to the nation. Now, I'm curious is how long did it take you to do the research and write this book? Because it really is extensive.
Thank you. It was about a year's worth of work full time.
And then, a lot of this you have where some people have already passed away, like Simone had passed away from breast cancer, and and that itself had been extremely traumatic for her, considering the time period that she went through with it. So, how were you able to collect all this information? Was it just from the children? Was it, archives? How did you do this?
It was letters, it was correspondence, pieces of this, pieces of that. Talked to all the children, absolutely. We were very fortunate because in the Stalnaker attic, in Jerry's attic, he found Simone's diary. No one knew it existed. It was all in French. So what we did was get a member of the French Air Force to translate it page by page. So for me, for months, I would get in the mail, an email every single day as to what happened to Simone that day. And for me, it was like I was reliving it. And she talked about her time in prison. She talked about the release. She talked about meeting George, finding out she was pregnant, all those things in her life. And it was just fascinating for me. So I was able to get a lot of direct quotes from her. George lived longer. So George actually did a homemade DVD of his story. And Jerry found that in the attic, and I was able to play that and use a lot of George's quotes. The only person who was still alive from that era was Bess Miller. Bess was Stubbs' wife, and Bess was 18 at the time when she and Stubb got married. Stubb worked in the defense industry, and he was told that he would not be drafted. And, of course, he was, because everyone was being drafted back then. So this 18-year-old had her husband in the war fighting overseas. She found out that George's plane went down. Stubb volunteered to be the first out of the plane to lighten the load. And Bess told me Stubb thought so much of George that he used to say, if George asked me to jump out of an airplane, I would do it. And that's exactly what happened. So Bess is still alive, and it was just such a thrill to be able to talk to her over the phone and get some firsthand information on the flight crew and their return to Paris. But aside from Bess, who is now 94, and let me tell you, she is one feisty lady. I just love talking to her. Picture this 94-year-old saying, well, you know, I'm on Facebook all the time, and I drive, of course, and when I get old, I think I'll move in with my daughter. She's 94 years old. She said, I am a little hard of hearing, but I suppose that's not so bad for a 94-year-old. And I said, that's not so bad at all. Bess got the very first book when it came off the press.
Oh, man. Now, in the press release you sent me, you know, you wrote that George and Simone may be people born worlds apart, but they're alike in one important way. Heroism is in their DNA. And when I read about what was going on with his children, especially towards the end of the book, what really struck me as pure heroism was the one daughter that is suffering from Parkinson's. And she was not able to type on the keyboard, but she was texting you.
She would also text me every day. She has Parkinson's. She's in a nursing home in Florida, and she is a wonderful woman. She has use of her thumbs. And because she does, she was able to text. And her mind is fully intact. She's a brilliant woman. She told me of the days with her parents, how her parents met, and what she went through as a woman on the Auburn track team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fascinating because now we've got Title IX, which is various universities and others are starting to, I'm going to say it, bastardize the intent of it. But here she was able to beat the men on the track team, and they would not allow her to participate because it was a men's track team. So instead of, as she said, well, if they wanted publicity and they wanted donations to come in, and you have someone like me that is so good, why don't you start a women's team? But no, instead, they fired her. They fired her.
As a cost savings. They said she was the team's manager. They wouldn't let her be part of the team. Mel Rosen, who was the men's Olympic track coach, and he's a member of the Coaches Hall of Fame, he just as a sideline one day, he said, hey, I'd like to have the fastest runners in the team race against the team manager. And the team all laughed and said, are you kidding? Race against a girl? He said, give it a try, because he knew how good she was. She beat half the team. And the Auburn band, which was a very large band, as well as the Auburn football team, was cheering her on. They were all snickers after she beat half the team. And then the coach said, all right, the other half of you race against her now. She beat the rest of the team. She was the fastest runner on that team. And yet she couldn't compete. I am sure they could have petitioned the NCAA. They could have done something, start a women's team, done something to say, let her be part of the team. But they didn't.
No.
And she never got over that.
I don't blame her. I honestly don't blame her.
I don't either.
Well, you know, the attitude towards, women in sports and in the workplace is vastly different. And that came about basically because of World War II, because women now are doing jobs that were not traditionally jobs for women to do. They were out there in the factories. They were out there in the fields. They were out there driving the trucks. They were flying the planes. They were also serving in the war in areas that, again, were not traditional women's roles.
That's right. We talked about how small the American Army was. America had virtually no industrial capacity for war machines either, and everything was converted For instance, the whole automobile industry was converted to production of war material. There were only, I think it's 164 automobiles produced in the U.S. during all the World War II years. So all that was converted, and much of the work was done by women who left the home and said, I want to help the war effort too. There's no way we would have won without the women.
And here we have Simone, a French citizen, helping to win the war. What she did was, necessary, and it was important work that she did. The information she was able to get out, the things that she was able to identify, made her an extremely phenomenal and powerful weapon for the French.
Absolutely. No question about it.
And these are little-known people that no one knows about. I do remember reading recently a story of a woman who was also a resistance fighter, and she ended up, after the war, moving to London, and she never wanted anyone to know what she did in the resistance. Matter of fact, when she passed away, her daughter had a plaque put next to the apartment, the entrance to the apartment, that said that this was a fighter, but never named who the fighter was. And that's how a lot of resistance fighters were. They just never talked about their experience.
Yeah. In fact, there's a plaque outside the apartment where that woman lives. It's there now, in Britain, and it simply says, a courageous woman lived here, period. Never mentions her name because she didn't want her name to be mentioned. She went on BBC television for an interview, but she went in disguise so no one would know who she was.
Go ahead.
And despite that, there was someone who recognized her and said, you were on TV last night, weren't you? She said, no, you're mistaken. It wasn't me. She wanted no notoriety at all. She became surrounded by cats, and she was known as an eccentric cat lady. And no one knew what she did during World War II. And so it was with so many of the veterans and civilians.
Yeah. Now, I found out something that really shocked me, because you were talking about in the book the, oh, good Lord, the word just went right out of my mind. The start and the introduction of the Sieg Heil salute. I had no idea it traced back to an American university with Nazi ties.
Yeah, it's amazing. Originally, the salute to the flag, the Pledge of Allegiance, was the Nazi salute. And Roosevelt changed that to the hand over the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until I did that research.
Oh, man.
So that's where it came from. And a lot of the Nazi cheers came from American football game cheers. And Hitler loved the idea that people would get so hyped up at American football games, and people would be chanting. And so he wanted that as part of his movement.
Yeah, because on page 127 in your book, I did mark it. I have all these notes all over the place. The former Harvard student, Ernst Putzi, I cannot pronounce his last name, Hanstagel? He was a member of the Hitler's inner circle. He wrote the marches for the Nazis, including one that took the cheer, Harvard, 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 rah, 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 and turned it into the famous, or the infamous, I should say, Sieg Heil song.
Can you imagine that?
And
and when he first played it for Hitler, he claims that Hitler went dancing around the room saying, that's it, that's what we need for our movement. That'll get people all psyched up. That's what we have to do at our rallies.
Yeah, so football rallies became the Nazis' cheers.
Imagine.
But this is something that is not being taught. This history is being lost. And as you said, every day we're losing, I believe you said approximately 900 World War II veterans a day. And no one's tapping all this information. You know, I do have my friend Colin Heaton, who's a historian as well as a veteran, that does write a lot of these books. He's a history professor with his wife. And I'm glad people like you are out there trying to get the story out. We need more books talking about what happened. And it makes us cherish what we have today even more, because I can't imagine myself doing what Simone did. Trying to place myself in her shoes and being starved and tortured every day by her enemies, and then having to tend to them when they're injured.
Imagine that. Simone told about a woman. She was in isolation for months, but there was a woman who was thrown into her cell who had been raped and battered. She bashed her head against the side of the cell, and Simone held her in her arms until she died. Simone said, "The one thing I regret is I never learned her name." Imagine going through that kind of experience.
Yeah. When I read that, that was... we have no idea what actually happened to Simone, whether or not she also faced the same circumstances. But the fact that she survived...
You're right.
And her PTSD, and the only one that knew what actually happened to her was her husband, George. These stories need to get out there. So if we can look evil in the eye, we can recognize it. We've got the Nazis, but the Nazis modeled themselves after radical Islam. And this is something that no one is paying attention to. So what the Nazis did...
Indeed.
Islamic terrorists have been doing this since the birth of Islam. We have to recognize our enemies, and if we don't get stories like out there, how can we know evil?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we've always confronted evil, and fortunately there have been heroic people like George and Simone who've stood up to it and said, I will sacrifice, I will fight, whatever the cost.
Now, you chose the title of the book, and I didn't understand why you chose that. I was thinking about because of George and Simone, their love, their children lived, freedom lived. But when I got to the final chapter, only then did I understand why you chose that. And that is an extremely touching story. I want you to get out of that.
Sure. In 1984, George and his crew returned to France. It was the 40th anniversary of D-Day, and they went there actually just a couple of weeks after Ronald Reagan went there to make his famous speech at Normandy, which is one of the greatest speeches by an American president of all time. It's just brilliant, and I captured some of it in the book. Mm-hmm. So George and members of the crew went back to France, and they were treated like heroes, like rock stars. Every village turned people out. There were ceremonies in every village, and George gave plaques to members of the resistance that helped them. The plaques said, "Because of you, we live." And in turn, the members of George's flight crew were presented with pieces of the calcified plane, the B-26, along with parachute remnants as souvenirs. And these people had a lasting bond, those in the resistance and members of the flight crew. In fact, at the very end of the book is a quote from Tata, who was one of the farm girls. She was 11 years old when her parents hid the flyers for a month behind enemy lines. And Tata said, "We'll always be grateful to the American people for freeing France. We'll thank to our last days the young soldiers who, often at the cost of their lives, came to fight on our soil. A great thank you from the bottom of our hearts."
The most important
thing... So this is something that changed the lives of many of the people. It formed lifelong bonds.
Yeah, and the difference is that we went over there to fight for freedom, to fight for liberty. We didn't go over there to conquer. And that is the difference.
Not at all.
And I get so angry where I hear people say that we're colonialists. We're going over there to steal this, to conquer the people. No, we go over what we do is we go over there, we help give freedom to the people, and then we leave. Sometimes we choose the wrong time to leave, but we do. We say, all right, this is your country, you run it, you do what you need to do. It just drives me crazy because when they say that we're a colonialist, they then dishonor the memory of people like George and Simone.
They do. They really should read some American history.
All right, Kurtz, I know you had another.
Right.
Kurtz, I know you had another question. Jump in, baby.
Well, I just wanted to mention, since we were talking about the greatest generation, I want to say that in Desert Storm, we lost like about 148 U.S. battle deaths, about 145 non-combat deaths, including 15 women. But on any given day in any particular battle in the South Pacific or over in Germany in World War II, we could lose up to 18,000 people in one day. And I really don't think America has a understanding or appreciation for what these guys went through. I mean, we could upset, and I would, at any loss, a life. But if we lose like 100 people over a 4-year period, it's like, protesting and everything. And
it's horrible to lose those 100. We all agree on that, because the 100 had families, and they were heroic in their own way. But you're right, the scope and size of World War II is just mind-boggling, especially given the population of the U.S. And in fact, the population of the world back then, in all, there were 58 million deaths because of World War II. 58 million military and civilian deaths. It's just staggering.
Yeah, and the majority of them, you write in your book.
That's one reason why Osama bin Laden said, if we kill enough Americans, they'll quit.
Well, he found out that's not.
Well, that's someone who doesn't understand our history. Again,
no.
Read American history. It's not true.
Well, we're coming down to our last 7 minutes. I can't believe the show is going so fast. Between Richard Lynch and now you, Len, and the theme of the whole thing today was our military men and war. But Cal, who is our northern neighbor, wrote that the French don't call D-Day an invasion, but a débarquement, which she wasn't sure what it meant, but it means a departure. Instead of an invasion, they're talking about the departure of the Nazis from the land of France. It's an interesting how you look at it. One may say it's an invasion, and we call it the invasion of Normandy, but instead we chased out the bad guys. So it's a departure. So that's why the French use that term. I did take a little French.
Liberation.
Yes.
Same with me. A little bit in school.
Petite. Petite.
There's a wonderful scene also that Simone describes when the Germans finally do surrender, and she and George are in the streets the day that the surrender goes into effect. It was signed the previous evening, and they are marching through the streets, and Simone says, "Can you imagine a happier scene?" George said, "Well, actually I can," and he presents her with an engagement ring. Simone says, "Bells are ringing in the street, people are marching, the Germans have surrendered at long last, and George and I are going to be married." But then in the very next sentence, she says, "On the other hand, mourning for the dead plays down my joy." So even in the happiest moment of her life, it's still surrounded by death.
It is. Well, Len, it has been a pleasure having you on. The title of your book is Because of You, We Live, The Untold Story of George and Simone Stalnaker. They can get it by going to your website, which is Sandler, the teeth in backwards, your last name, Sandler, ASSOC for association.com, or they can go up to Amazon and get it and enjoy it. It's a fantastic read, an interesting story. You got a lot of little details in there, explaining the technology of what these guys were facing when they were trying to train to go over and assist in the fight, and the bombing runs and the casualties and other little knickknacks in there. It's a very interesting book, and I recommend it for everyone to read. I want to thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
And as my closing song today, I normally play something that's... I forget what the heck I play. My Name is America or something else like that. But because you're here again, it's going to be because of your other book, the Jared Monty book, that song that was written because of that story by Lee Brice, I Drive Your Truck. How was that for
yes,
an ending? So
that's a terrific ending. Wonderful song.
All right.
I just have one thing to say.
Go ahead, Curtis.
For anybody who was looking for me to respond in the chat room, I was not able to get in the chat room today, so I wasn't ignoring anybody.
Well, it looks like there was a lot of people that weren't able, so it looks like Blog Talk Radio is having a problem. But fortunately, Len, majority of people listen to the show, listen to the archive, so we're not going to worry about that. It's not going to affect our listenership. They can still look at the description and go and get your book. So, Len, you're going to have to let me know when your next project is coming up and send it to me, and we'll get you back on. Or just even have you come on to do some political commentary with us. Maybe how about doing that one time with us so we get your political viewpoints. Sure. Right.
Okay.
All right. And we're going to be back here on Friday. We've got a former diplomat and national security expert Jim Horn with us, followed by Gun Owners of America, Larry Pratt. So, guys, until then, I say good night, God bless, and we leave you with Lee Brice, I Drive Your Truck.
89 cents in the ashtray, half-empty bottle of Gatorade rolling in the floorboard. That dirty Braves cap on the dash, dog tags hanging from the rear view, old skull can and cowboy boots, and a gold army shirt folded in the back. This thing burns gas like crazy, but that's alright. People got their ways of coping, oh, and I got mine. I drive your truck, I roll every window down, and I burn up every back road in this town. I find a field, I tear it up till all the pain's a cloud of dust. Yes, sometimes I drive your truck.
90 seconds.
Leave that radio playing, same old country station where you left it. Yeah, man, I crank it up, and you'd probably punch my arm right now if you saw this tear rolling down on my face. Hey, man, I'm trying to be tough.
60 seconds.
Mama asked me this morning if I'd been by your grave, but that flag and stone ain't where I feel you anyway. I drive your truck, I roll every window down, and I burn up every back road in this town. I find the field, I tear it up till all the pain's a cloud of dust. Yes, sometimes I drive your truck. I've cussed, I prayed, I've said goodbye, shook my fist.
10 seconds.
These days when I'm missing you this much, I drive your truck, I roll every window down, and I burn up every back road in this town. I find the field, I tear it up till all the pain's a cloud of dust. Yes, sometimes, brother, sometimes I drive your truck. I drive your truck. I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind. I drive your truck.